What does it actually take to change NASCAR's mind about a driver? Not one good lap, not one lucky finish, not one caution that falls at the right moment. It takes a performance so undeniable, so sustained, and so precisely delivered on the kind of track where everyone expected failure, that the garage, the media, and the fans have no choice but to sit up and pay attention. That is exactly what happened at Charlotte Motor Speedway on the night of the 2026 Coca-Cola 600, and the driver at the center of it all was Shane Van Gisbergen. The final results sheet said 11th place, but anyone who watched that race from start to finish knows that number tells almost none of the story, because what SVG put together over 600 miles of one of NASCAR's most demanding intermediate ovals was not a survival act, it was a statement. To understand why Charlotte mattered so much, you have to understand exactly how brutal the conversation around Shane Van Gisbergen had been on oval tracks. For nearly 2 years inside the NASCAR Cup Series, the narrative around him followed a predictable pattern. Road courses? Elite, one of the best in the world. A driver who could leave the entire field looking like amateurs when the track turned left and right. Ovals? That was where the questions started, and they never really stopped. The critics were not manufacturing problems out of thin air. The 2025 Cup Series season gave them real documented evidence. Van Gisbergen's average finish on ovals in 2025 was 31.2 across 6 races. He suffered crash DNFs at Phoenix Raceway and Las Vegas Motor Speedway in back-to-back weeks. He was collected in damage at Atlanta Motor Speedway on the final lap. He finished 34th at Martinsville Speedway after losing a right rear wheel following a botched pit stop. And 4 laps down at the end of the race. These were not close calls that went the wrong way. These were performances that raised legitimate structural questions about whether a driver who had spent his entire career in Australian supercars could genuinely adapt to the physical and tactical demands of NASCAR's oval-heavy schedule. The media reflected that uncertainty clearly. Can he survive a full Cup schedule was a question being asked not just by fans in comment sections, but by people with credentials inside the sport. The concern was that Van Gisbergen was a specialist, a driver who could be deployed on road and street courses to win races and collect playoff spots, but who would spend the oval-heavy majority of the season simply treading water in the standings. That was not an unfair characterization at the time. It was built on real data, real results, and a real pattern of incidents and struggles. On top of that, the format of the 2025 season added even more pressure. With a 79-point deficit to the playoff cut line early in the year, any realistic path to the chase through points accumulation was effectively closed. It became win or bust on road courses. Everything rested on 4 remaining opportunities at tracks where he was elite: Mexico City, Chicago, Sonoma, and Watkins Glen. The oval races became, by necessity, extended practice sessions with championship stakes attached. Fast forward to May 25th, 2026. The 67th running of the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. This is not a race that forgives inexperience. It is 600 miles long. It punishes tire management mistakes. It demands that a driver maintain pace over long green flag runs that can stretch for dozens of laps without interruption. It requires confidence in traffic, patience in restarts, and the ability to build speed throughout a run rather than simply attacking corners. These were precisely the skills that critics argued Van Gisbergen had not yet developed on ovals. Qualifying was rained out, which placed SVG third on the grid based on owner points. What followed was one of the most complete oval performances of his NASCAR Cup Series career to date. By the end of Stage 1, he was running 10th. By the end of Stage 2, he had climbed to 9th. By the end of Stage 3, he was 7th. Collecting 5 additional stage points along the way. His average running position across the entire race was 7.81, meaning he was not simply making ground during lucky sequences and then fading. He was consistently, lap after lap, holding his own against the established stars of the sport. He battled directly with drivers like Christopher Bell and Ty Gibbs. He moved through traffic aggressively. He searched for speed in multiple lanes as the track changed throughout the night. Then came the moment that made people stop and take notice. Late in the final stage, Van Gisbergen stayed out on older tires as rain threatened to bring out a caution and shorten the race. The gamble, called by crew chief Stephen Doran, put SVG in the lead. He led 11 laps. The most laps he had ever led on an oval in the Cup Series. For a period of time, he was holding off the rest of the field on a track where just 1 year earlier he could barely finish inside the top 30. At one point during the final stage, he was running fifth place in the Coca-Cola 600 on an intermediate oval in only his second full season of NASCAR Cup Series racing. Then the situation unraveled. The rain held off longer than expected. Van Gisbergen lost the lead as fresher tires came into play. A slow pit stop cost him time. A series of chaotic restarts shuffled him further back. He crossed the finish line 11th after rain officially ended the race, with Daniel Suarez taking the victory. The frustration in SVG's post-race comments was immediate. "It's hard," he said. "I had an amazing day, but I'm pissed. We were a top 5 or 6 car, but we just didn't execute at the end. It was really cool to run up front all day." He also made clear that the strategy call was sound. It was a good call by Steven to stay out there. It was awesome to be able to lead some laps. One additional detail that cannot be overlooked: Van Gisbergen outpaced teammate Ross Chastain before Chastain's mid-race crash. Chastain won the 2025 Coca-Cola 600. The fact that SVG was running ahead of him in the 2026 edition on the same equipment at the same track is a meaningful data point about the level of performance he delivered. If Charlotte existed in isolation, it would be easy to discount, but it does not exist in isolation. The signs had been accumulating throughout the 2026 season, and taken together, they form a pattern that is difficult to argue against. At Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta in February 2026, Van Gisbergen posted what was then a career-best oval finish of 6th. The path to that result was not clean. He went off into the front stretch grass twice, once after getting squeezed by Kyle Larson, once through his own error, and charged back through the field both times. "I felt confident here last time we were here too, so kind of built on that," he said afterward. "Just more and more comfortable with these races the more I do them. A driver who panics under pressure does not recover from 2 grass excursions and still finish 6th in a Cup Series race." At the 2026 Daytona 500, before being collected in a crash near the front of the field, Van Gisbergen spent the majority of the event running inside the top 10. His confidence in the superspeedway draft was dramatically improved compared to what observers had expected entering the season. He ultimately finished 31st due to contact, not due to pace or racecraft. The stage point accumulation is another concrete indicator. In 2025, earning stage points on oval tracks was a rarity for SVG. In 2026, it has become a regular occurrence. That represents a fundamental shift in how he and the number 97 Trackhouse Racing Chevrolet are approaching oval race weekends. Not as damage limitation exercises, but as genuine competitive opportunities. Critically, Trackhouse Racing as an organization has not been dominant on intermediate ovals in 2026. The team has had strong individual moments, but consistent speed has not been easy to find. That context matters. When a driver improves while his equipment has not dramatically improved around him, that points to driver-specific development as the primary cause. Van Gisbergen is learning. He is adapting. The gains belong to him. Trackhouse Racing founder and co-owner Justin Marks put the broader picture plainly when discussing SVG's road course ability. "We have a race car driver that is at a level that I don't think this sport has ever seen before on these road courses. If that is the ceiling on his best surface, and he is simultaneously raising his floor on ovals, the implications for his long-term future in NASCAR are significant." One concern that could theoretically accompany oval improvement is regression on the surface where Van Gisbergen built his reputation. That concern has no supporting evidence in 2026. At Watkins Glen International in May 2026, Van Gisbergen started from pole and led 74 of 100 laps. With 24 laps remaining, crew chief Steven Doran called him in for 4 fresh tires, dropping him from the lead to 24th, nearly 30 seconds behind leader Ty Gibbs. Van Gisbergen needed only 17 laps to retake the lead and went on to win by 7.288 seconds over Michael McDowell. That margin, 7.288 seconds in modern NASCAR, is nearly unheard of. "We have a race car driver that is at a level that I don't think this sport has ever seen before on these road courses," said Marks in the aftermath. It was SVG's second consecutive win at the Glen and his 7th Cup Series victory overall, extending his own record as the driver with the most Cup wins born outside the United States. At Circuit of the Americas earlier in the season, despite concerns about raw speed entering the weekend, Van Gisbergen finished second and remained a genuine threat for victory throughout. He has now won 6 of the last 7 road and street course races in the Cup Series. The critical point here is that these two developments, oval improvement and road course dominance, are happening simultaneously. He is not sacrificing one for the other. A year ago, the honest assessment of Shane Van Gisbergen in the NASCAR Cup Series was that he was a specialty weapon, a driver who could win on road and street courses, collect playoff spots through victories, and provide trackhouse racing with a strong return on investment across roughly 6 weekends per season. The oval races were, at best, a work in progress. That assessment is no longer accurate, and the numbers from 2026 make that clear. After Charlotte, Van Gisbergen moved up 2 positions in the standings and is no longer on the playoff bubble, sitting 16th with breathing room for the first time this season. Across social media, the shift in tone among fans and analysts has been noticeable. On Reddit's r/NASCAR, posts following Charlotte reflected genuine surprise at the level of his performance. On Twitter/X, credentialed reporters and casual observers alike acknowledged what they had witnessed. One fan account noted plainly, "SVG genuinely impressed me last night. His most complete oval race by far. Dude deserved a top 10. A NASCAR podcast host went further. "SVG is already the best true road course guy on ovals of all time. 1 oval win, and we think he's a Hall of Famer." The old argument, that Shane Van Gisbergen is a great road racer but an incomplete NASCAR driver, is running out of supporting evidence. If his oval trajectory continues on the same path it has followed from 2025 into 2026, and if his road course dominance remains at its current level, then the conversation about his future in the Cup Series will look very different by the time the 2027 season begins. The word championship contender was not part of the discussion around him when he arrived in NASCAR. It is beginning to enter that discussion now. Charlotte was not a perfect race for him. There are still areas to develop. There are still oval tracks on the schedule where experience will matter, but what the Coca-Cola 600 demonstrated across 600 miles of one of the sport's most demanding intermediate ovals is that Shane Van Gisbergen is no longer simply trying to survive oval racing. He has crossed into something different. He is learning how to compete, and there is an enormous difference between those two things.